Welcome back to Comic Quarantine. Today we're going to talk one of the most critically acclaimed movie and one of the pioneers in cerebral and non-linear filmmaking, the one and only Christopher Nolan. And this movie is part of a trilogy and the beginning of the trilogy. And my favorite movie in the trilogy, The Batman Begins. Now this movie is absolutely timeless. When this movie released back in 2005, I was maybe too young to watch it, but I did see this movie before The Dark Knight and recently during the lockdown. Now, the mega mind of this movie is Christopher Nolan. He made a superhero who is really realistic and uses military grade weapons. The fact he used comic characters like Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, who guides Bruce to various military prototype weapons, is really fun to see.
So what do you think? Does it come in black?
Now, the supporting cast in this movie is a fantastic choice by Nolan. Alfred, played by Michael Caine, who's like a father figure to Bruce. The now famous Cillian Murphy, who plays Scarecrow. Yes, I see you, Peaky Blinders fans. Henry Ducard, played by Liam Neeson, the Taken guy. And my favorite character in this movie, Sergeant Gordon, is not commissioner yet, played by Gary Oldman, who actually nails the performance and the mustache of Jim Gordon. And I was surprised when I came to realize that Christopher Nolan actually casted Gary Oldman for the role of Ra's al Ghul and not as Jim Gordon. But later he felt maybe Gary Oldman should play the role of a good guy for once. Now, the movie primarily tells Bruce Wayne's journey of becoming the Batman. It's his emotional burden and the loss of his parents, being really alone in the world. One of the overarching themes of the movie is fear, as in the beginning of the movie, we see Bruce falling down to a cave which is swarmed by bats, which leads to him gaining a fear of bats. This scene is influenced by the panel from the 1989 comic, The Man Who Falls. Other comics which influence this movie are also Batman Year One by Frank Miller, which is a classic, and also The Dark Knight Returns. After the loss of his parents, Bruce travels around the world as a criminal because he wants to know what it takes really to be a criminal, understand the psychology behind it. And eventually meets a man known as Henry Ducard, who takes him to a ninja clan known as the League of Shadows, where Bruce spends his initial years of training, and eventually he meets the character known as Ra's al Ghul. But Bruce has tested his morality after the end of the training. He is asked to slay a criminal for his crimes, but Bruce refused to do so. That's when we realize Ra's al Ghul is a man with the same principles, but he is an executioner. Meanwhile, Bruce believes in justice.
Justice, not vengeance.
Bruce escapes and returns to Gotham City later, but he finds the city dying to poverty and mob bosses, destroying everything what his parents stood for.
What is this?
Bruce uses a symbol of fear against the criminals, which is bats, using the very cave as his base due to its long history with his family. During the Civil War, Alfred tells Bruce that his grandfather used this cave as a way of transporting slaves to their freedom. He uses his new persona to take down criminals, starting with Falcone, but Batman's motives being altruistic rather than selfish reasons, like Falcone, who scares and controls the civilians. Also, Batman crucifies Falcone to the bat signal later that night. What Batman did realize was that Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul were working together. They were weaponizing the fear toxin and dumping it to the public water supply of Gotham. So eventually they would be bringing in a weapon which would vaporize the whole city's water supply. Ra's al Ghul was a formidable character in this movie. He was like a guide and mentor to Bruce during his early years. But also he has a dual identity as a villain towards the end of the movie. The same can be told about Bruce Wayne and Batman. Being an eccentric playboy during the day, but also donning the costume and fighting against injustice, and being a morally incorruptible, a watchful protector, a dark knight. His greatest trait being struggling to lead a normal life, which would restrict him being Batman. The suffering is part of his personality. He never chooses to kill his criminals, and his sense of justice makes him monumental. Scarecrow also plays an equally badass villain in this movie. He literally drugs Batman during the first encounter and burns him up, which sends Batman to a nightmare of visions of his parents' gruesome murder, and sends Batman to a psychological shock of him revisiting his parents' murder. This scene is a nod to the Batman animated series episode titled Nothing to Fear, where he meets Scarecrow for the first time and gets drugged by his toxin and feels guilty in his parents' murder. But this movie is quite mean to Batman, which I think leads to character development. But later, Batman gives Scarecrow his own medicine, and we see Scarecrow's nightmare is seeing Batman as a black gooey monster. Kind of looks like a demon's head, which translates in Arabic to Ra's al Ghul. So Scarecrow's real fear is actually Ra's al Ghul. It also leads to Batman's transition of fearing bats to embracing the fear, and eventually using the fear to put on wrath upon his enemies. Batman escapes Arkham by weaponizing bats as a diversion tactic, which we see in the Year One comic by Frank Miller. Towards the end of the movie, Henry Ducard reveals himself to be Ra's al Ghul. Surprise. And he's the one who led towards the fall of Gotham and its economy, which in fact led to increased crime and the death of Bruce's parents by a murder. The final battle takes place in the train against Ra's al Ghul, who wants to destroy Gotham. And it gets on a personal side when Ra's al Ghul tells Batman that don't be afraid like his father, who failed to save his mom and himself. But it also resonates with the same words Thomas Wayne said to Bruce before dying, don't be afraid. Bruce responds by saying he intends to destroy the train and overthrows Ra's al Ghul, choosing not to kill him, but also not saving him. Finally giving up with the only memory the Gotham City train will have. After saving the city and finding a new alliance with Jim Gordon, Jim Gordon meets up with Batman on the rooftop with the bat signal lit up and says there's a new villain in the city who has multiple homicides and murders and robberies, and who has the same theatrics like you, and gives him a card.
Leaves a calling card.
Why so serious?
Some of the Easter eggs and references I noticed while rewatching the movie. Victor Zsasz is in the movie. Now, some of you have seen the recent Birds of Prey. He is Black Mask's henchman and one of the main villain in the movie. He is like in the comics, he's a sadistic killer who marks his body after each victim he has killed. Also, the little kid who sees Batman in the fire escape is none other than the monster King Joffrey from Game of Thrones. So Batman hangs him, gives him a weapon in the movie. I think that eventually led to him to being an absolute terror. We also notice a familiar face, an actor called Rutger Hauer, who plays the role of a board member in the Wayne Industries. Now, this person has acted in one of my favorite duology, the Blade Runner 1989 movie, where he delivers a famous monologue which is critically acclaimed. What you see in this movie is that Christopher Nolan had surprisingly hired all British actors to play American roles.
You know, like I miss you or whatever, and I'm like, you miss me? What am I, your mother?
Now, personally, some of the things I feel Nolan missed in this movie is Batman being a detective. Now, most Batman movies don't show much detective element of him. Batman being called the world's greatest detective by Ra's al Ghul in comics is not being shown much here. Hopefully, the 2021 movie, which is gonna be directed by Matt Reeves, as confirmed to be a noir Batman detective story. I'm highly hyped for it. Played by the one and only Robert Pattinson. So the action scenes are also a little less amusing. Maybe Nolan has said in few interviews that he shoots the action films up close, so that the viewers get a feel how the criminal feels when he sees Batman. Which I think is not a good way to shoot action, because I'm getting beaten up by Batman. That concludes my revisiting of the 2005 Batman Begins movie. And next week we will be reviewing a hell of a TV series. Stay tuned, guys. Like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Goodbye. Hey Bruce, happy Martha's Day.